Oh, we're looking at presidents, going through them. We're going to start with John Kennedy, the last assassinated president that we had. You would think if somebody, our own government, people in our own government, this elitist group, um, some other people have a problem with Kennedy and the way he was helping people and the countrymen. They want to confuse us up with ads and in the news and everything like that. But I would recommend going to the news and looking at it and thinking for a second and reflecting the way that I look at it, in my opinion, that I can go and I can extract anything in the news that has anything to do with politicians, the president, or anything like that, and I can make a strong argument for why don't we have a Republican president instead of a Democrat president. And up to this point, it's all been games, and I don't know that enough people that vote that will be voting in the next election in 2016 for the president is fed up enough with the games going on and being played and being lied to so much that you would have to love that, the fact that you're being lied to, and you'd have to be into it, the person, enough, like the president we have now here, in order to be caught up with his BS and his baloney that is all can all be proven to be non-factual, um, can be proven to be completely ridiculous, and also prove that he's incompetent and shouldn't even be the president. So I can take any issue in the news right now, and I can make a strong argument for why. Why is this guy in there? You know. So we start with JFK. JFK was a good president. Was he the last good Democrat president that they had? I think he was, because I think he was a man's man. He was for the people. He wasn't for being a dictator and contradicting everything like he thinks he's some kind of lawyer or something like that. JFK was a good man, a good president. Aside from, it might have been a little bit opposite, where some people say about George Bush. I don't think he was a terrible president, almost to the point where I would have to argue with him being the lesser of the evils like that. And I would say there's a bit of good that goes with George Bush. Um, but now you're seeing, comparing what they say that to Kennedy. Could have Kennedy have been a better president than he actually was, a personal person that you would hang out with or whatever? No, like that maybe. But I know that he was an ideal president when he was assassinated. Ever since then, things kind of went back to where then it was. Um, I think the politicians were scared. The people out here, like normal people like us, might not have been, but people were in fear of being in the government, were in fear of not going with the status quo. So whatever that was in particular, you look past um, uh, um, Kennedy's um, vice president. I want to jump past him and go right to Nixon. Well, some people might start right in on Nixon 6 o'clock or whatever, but Nixon squashed the debt. He squashed their national debt. So then there was a thing too, and it's like it's not like as if it's not fought with people with money in a position with money. So they think because they have all this money that they have more of a powerful influence, and they show it by being able to be more of a maneuver and influence with just the fact that they have power from money. So money people speak, but um, I'd say that something they had some people had a problem in the government like Hillary Clinton back then in the day. She was actually one of the people with Fred Thompson who went out and got right into Nixon 6 o'clock. You know, so speaking of the tides turning, you know, her getting put on the spot in front of a panel and asked a bunch of questions like Whitewater, it makes a lot of sense because what goes around comes around. Nixon was a good president, and he was a Republican, and he may have been a better president than personally on the side besides being the president, just as a person could have been. But I don't know. All I know is he wasn't trying to pull anybody's chains necessarily, but to do the right things. And I believe that is something definitely that we need to learn from. Is not about the situations that happened to Nixon and Kennedy, but about what they did while they were president. I think it's very important for people to step up, teachers and other people that know this conspiracy and that there's something not right here and they're dwindling our money where it's worthless, really worthless now. But people need to pay attention to why those guys were handed their butts on a platter. And so now we have this liberal guidance. So I was talking about the news, so I can go and extract almost anything from the news that's crazy that you think, oh man, they need the police to go in there. So we pull us out of Iraq. We had now if people want to say Bush and Obama are the same. It's such a I mean I think it's such a bad thing to do to compare the two without sharing the actual differences of the two. One took us to Iraq, which is now coming clear that it was important for us to have a foothold in that area. And then we have this other president who couldn't wait to get us to pull us out, just so he could be the one to say he got us out of the war. And then he had a problem with the war in the first place. Maybe somebody should ask Obama why he has a problem with us being in Iraq in particular, when a lot of innocent people are going to die over that. So it's not like America did anything wrong or doing anything wrong, policing bad people who are going to come in and straight terrorize a place. So now the world's flipped upside down, and I just am wondering, would the world be so chaotic and flipped upside down if there had been a strong Republican, maybe even a more firm Republican than Bush? I necessarily don't necessarily want to see that either, because there's some things that I still hold on to. I'm still hopeful for. One of them is actually marijuana. Was hoping that it would become legal. So, and I'm not sure if getting the right Republican president that I'm talking about that I would prefer in a time of crisis and war would be in there instead of a liberal radical who's gonna stick to his guns even though the world shows how wrong he is. I would have to vote in and fill in the dot right there for the stronger Republican president for to become now in 2016 and point out this radical left wing radicalism that is just insane. So you have them saying I'm signed up to change.org and these other places. I sign petitions all the time for left wing. So I am not necessarily their enemy, but I have different emails that I get so I can support some of their causes and whatnot. And one of the causes that they had was to sign up and go walk for sex trafficking. So now, instead, I want to point out, so you want to pay terrorists to hand over, because I seen the video, I seen the documentary of what you guys are doing. You guys are taking a bunch of money and you're paying it to terrorists, and you're making terrorists more stronger and more influenced with money. They think that now that's what they need to do when they need some money or something to come up. They're just gonna go get themselves a bunch of slaves, and that's what the slave trade in particular, not just sex trafficking. We're talking about they're both connected to weak U.S. president. If you had a strong right wing president who was strong and firm on war and terrorism, you wouldn't have as much of a problem. We'd been cracking down on all this and our security on the internet as well. So instead of putting an emphasis and more focus on other people and what they're doing, they could have been narrowing down this thing and logically been making a lot of good connections with the different agencies and departments that we have that should be working for us, not against us. But here we are, we're going pre 9/11, and the stuff is all going to be working up against us. So I'm just saying, instead of paying our military and have a good president like Bush was with the troops. Bush always went and made the troops feel good. He always visited them, and they had wounded warriors and that. He's still to this day involved with those people fully. So I think that he was not just throwing people out there like some would try to say that. Stop it. There, I think he was not just sending people to war just to send people to war or anything like that. I mean, is that really what liberals think? Liberals think he just sent people off to go kill our troops off, or to push some kind of power trip thing or something. If it is, it has more of a dynamic structure to it now, even more, that makes me even more confident that he was doing the right thing, and that he was trying to promote democracy, not terrorism or whatever else that Mr. Obama has placed everywhere else in the world by taking a crap on all of our allies, as many as he could, in order to push more for his radical left-wing agenda that makes no sense. It's retarded. So I know for a fact I said this my whole life, basically ever since I've been wise enough to know. I've said liberals hate America. It's only obvious. They don't love or respect their country or their countrymen. So you have politicians playing games right here. Now we've seen some of the most wildest games, so many scandals from the Obama administration. You can pick one and try and focus on it, but there's so many you get wrapped up in hundreds. I mean, Benghazi is just one that we all know about. He's got some dirty tricks that he's got up his sleeve, trying to tax people more, make people poorer. And a lot of people, I would say, I think more people are wise to that now and realize that he's putting us not just here in America in a global depression. Stop. He's putting the world in a global depression. That dog, she was homeless, or a stray or something like that, and I napped her. Had her for a couple of years. She was, she was a real mess. She's got cigarette burns on her, and she's not. I think she was maybe a homeless person dog, and they smoked, and either a really hot cherry fell off, or they fell asleep and a cigarette went on the dog, and more than once. She's got multiple burn scars on her. But anyhow, so Now we're paying, so we're paying terrorists instead of taking care of our troops and making sure that they accomplish their job and they're successful. Now it's been a very liberal backwards thing, and now people can kind of get an idea without being told beforehand, right? Or being told before, just not following or believing it or paying attention. Now, now they have a chance to really be awake to what's been going on and what a travesty it is to leave people like that, like you did in Vietnam. I believe that is just horrific. The people that protested against the war are terrible. They did a terrible, terrible injustice to the Vietnamese people because these people, when you pull us out and you don't finish and accomplish the job with their military, they lose. We don't lose. We didn't lose Iraq. The Iraqi people lost Iraq. Afghanistan didn't lose Afghanistan. The Afghanistan people lost Afghanistan. And it was the same thing that happened to Vietnam. The Vietnamese people lost Vietnam. Well, America didn't lose Vietnam. First started with the French. We'll go into that. French occupied it for the rubber. Then they couldn't handle the communists. They knew that we could. So they had America come in and start facing off against the communists in a foreign country there. It was for to make a democracy at that point. French left. They were out of the picture at that point. Instead of the French staying and helping us fight, they put their tail in between their legs and they ran off and they left us standing there holding the bag. If you want to talk about holding the bag, that's how Vietnam started. Now, there's a lot of conspiracies, this and that, about the World Trade Tower and this and that, saying it's a government conspiracy and this and that. But I believe I have more ammunition and more fuel to when I say that Bush was more in the right to go in there and have the U.S. military presence around the world in places and to support our allies fully. If our allies are under attack, send our military in there to help stop whatever invader, invader of free people and democracies. So you lose democracy, you either lose it to evil communists, or now we see the terrorist, radical extremists in the world that are Muslim take over places. And especially since Obama's been in there, he's been very, very favorable to them and not to our troops for some reason. So it just goes to show where he stands, and they'll tell you anything to convince you to vote for Hillary or one of these other radical nuts that are just going to keep screwing it up even more. You want to be taxed more? You want to be more poorer? Go ahead and vote for her. But all I can say is that all the conspiracies. I mean, somebody told me yesterday, was talking to me, and they were saying, well, the Pentagon, they ran a plane into the Pentagon. They're talking about one of the most secured fortresses on the planet. I mean, plane should have been shot down. Well, I told them, I said, if there's um, anything, phenomenon, or any kind of thing that could happen that is very strange like that, it's definitely going to be, you can do something very crazy and just not very, say, understandable. It'd be kind of confusing, I'd say, with airplanes. Airplanes are a mysterious bugger as it is, and I just pointed out that every year there's a mysterious phenomenon, some kind of flight flies over somewhere, disappears, and now we have planes disappearing with no traces, um, planes that are being hijacked, all more high tech. So they're like, don't even know how, but all of a sudden the planes took over, like it had a remote put into it or something, and then they remotely flew the plane into some terrorist territory or something somewhere. But I definitely see with what the military is up against that Bush was definitely right for putting them in that position, and that is their job in particular. Um, you know, all I can say is I commend them very much, and I probably look up to the military probably more than I mean all of them. I was raised in the Marine Corps, but I probably look up to all of the military that overseas are fighting and come back. Veterans probably look up to them more than any other role model, football player or movie star, anything like that. So you got my opinion like that on the presidents and what I see is going on in my opinion from where I'm coming from. And I'll just leave it at that. That's a person with a view like that that probably has more respect for the military than anything else. Aside from God himself, I probably respect the military about the same as my family. Where if you mess with my family, then you get into real touchy personal things. If they're not being successful out there, then I feel let down and I feel very awkward and upset about just like it was a relative. I feel like doing something. I don't know what to do in a lot of these cases, but at least I let the military know that's how I feel about it, and I highly respect them that way. So I just don't know what other people think or see. They don't want us to be able to talk about politics in particular, but the politic range is got so wide open that you almost can't get into a conversation without talking about it. It's really hard. You're talking to some people and then you're like, how do I not say something? You know? Not wanting to be rude at times. Sometimes you don't really want to say nothing because it's like that you don't want to, you know, cause some political to come in between you and somebody. But anyhow, I'm gonna leave it at that. Some food for thought. Thanks.